He was a clever man, charismatic and handsome, a lone figure passing through life like a shadow through cold water. Things were going exceptionally well. His career was sailing forward. Along the way, it was fine to have a little fun, to mess with those who thought they knew more than you did. And all he was doing, really, was putting new spirits into old bottles. To do that, you had to have a keen visual understanding of how a vintage absinthe bottle is supposed to appear, honed by years of collecting and studying the rich history and culture of the drink. Even more important was the ability to identify hundreds or even thousands of distinct aromas that intermingled and overlapped within the bouquet of 100-year-old absinthe. And then, you needed the ability to taste, to read and interpret a liquid just like some people read books, feeling and understanding the viscosity and relative acidity of the spirit in much the same way that a careful reader senses the texture and thickness of paper, while also interpreting, identifying, and internalizing its flavors and aromas, just as the eye follows curls and spots of ink that swerve into letters before becoming words, which turn into sentences and thus convey sense and meaning. He had those skills, and many more. What was important, however, was that the others didn't. They didn't know. They couldn't taste. Their sense of smell was blunted, as if they'd never gotten over a bad cold, as if they'd never even fully been born, staying forever embryonic, piles of unrealized potential, all of them. They didn't understand how the world worked. They didn't understand how things were supposed to look, or even know the most basic history of a subject they claimed to love. They were, in a word, dumb. And he was not. The first version was just to see if he could do it, if he really had those skills. He had been part of the absinthe world long enough to have tasted dozens of samples from the golden era of absinthe, before it was banned in most countries in the lead-up to World War I. In most countries, but not all. An important distinction. He'd watched his friends share updates of stumbling across an unopened bottle of C.F. Berger at an estate sale, or an old Pernod Fils in the back of a dusty antique store, and he tasted many of the finds they'd shared. There were new makers, too, some of whom were quite good, turning out spirits that had much of the character of the drink that had attracted so many of his literary and artistic heroes. Rimbaud, Van Gogh, Degas, Manet, Picasso, Hemingway, and others. He enjoyed the new versions, especially considering their affordability and availability. Even with all the money in the world, it's not easy to find century-old bottles of the absinthe favored by Toulouse-Lautrec, for example.